So there wasn't enough time, even with no resistance, for the building to fall to the ground. It couldn't have fallen and hit the ground. The ground would shake from, or if you're hammering something like a jackhammer of pancaking, if it's sitting on bedrock going kaboomity boomity boomity boom down, floor by floor breaking up, well, it's going to be a whole lot longer than 20 seconds or so, or 30 seconds. It's going to be at least 100 seconds, but because it takes time to break stuff. But 8 seconds, again, that doesn't even account for something falling off the roof
in free fall speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's consistent with, again, the top 90 stories or so turning into dust.
Mm-hmm. So we do have potentially a little bit from the bottom floors, and that potentially then could be attributed that the main, how should we put this, the core, the center focus, if you will, of the energy weapon that was used was directed towards the top portion, if you will, of the buildings, correct?
Not necessarily. Not
Okay.
necessarily. There's other scenarios that you can see. This is again an interference effect. It's not like a laser beam from outer space, as so many of my detractors like to present it as.
Right.
It's not that type of energy weapon. It's a field effect. Imagine if you have a piece of glass with metal filings on it, you run a magnet underneath it. You can see the magnetic field shaped by the metal filings.
Yep.
Let's say you have something else you're going to interfere with that magnetic field. It would interfere in that zone, but it wouldn't be that where the magnet was, where it was directed from. It's like two different signals superimposed on each other in a volume of space. Another example I like to give is, and this is a little bit simplified, a cell phone. Your cell phone doesn't work all by itself. You need a cell phone tower to transmit the signal, to get the signal from your phone to send it elsewhere.
That's correct.
And you also need batteries in your cell phone. So let's say you have a cell phone with working batteries, but you're not in the range of a cell phone tower. No go. If you have a cell phone tower but not a working cell phone, it doesn't work. But the cell phone works within this range of the tower. You don't care what tower you're in range of. You just need one, that works, that's in that range. And sometimes you go around a corner, or if you're driving down a road, you go around a turn, and it doesn't work because that isn't covered, that area. So if you have the cell phone range, the tower, with the signal the tower can deal with, is one thing, and then where the cell phone is within that means you get to have a conversation. So we have like an overall field, and then within that, something else that causes the destruction in a particular place. It's not like a single item shooting from a single place. It's an effect within a region of space.
That's right. So this interference pattern, this could basically, what we're seeing in building 5 and 6 with these weird kind of holes in them, and certain other aspect that you've detailed about the circular holes in some of the windows and so forth. This might be a little imprint of that, or a signature of that, if you will.
Yes, John Hutchison's samples was much smaller scale. It's like something tunnels in a particular direction along a line, and then at a radial distance away from that line, it destroys material. So he has this solid aluminum bar. There's pictures of it in the book, where one of these tunnels is just, it's like it's drilling in space through this aluminum bar in the middle. But you can't stick your drill, in and bend it around a corner and get to that area. It's just that it travels in space and then destroys things in a cylindrical pattern. And the holes in Building 6 look like they're about 24 feet in diameter. Kind of look like that. It's tempting to think it came from above. It would seem like a possibility, but also what I've gotten to know about this weird interaction is along a line, it destroys in a radial direction. So you could have one of these lines, going into Building 5 or 6, that do this kind of thing. just looking at the pattern of destruction that it does.
Do you think that the pattern is predictable? Can it be, you think, measured, or there was an anticipation maybe that it would also create damage into these buildings? Do you think?
Yeah, I think they kind of wanted to get rid of some of 4 and 5. Maybe they wanted more. Maybe they wanted less. Remember the corner of Building 4 that went missing?
Mm.
That's at the corner of Liberty and Church. That's also near a bathtub wall. It was kind of interesting, and this pattern. But we don't know for sure why. But there is a pattern that of this destruction. Also, with the toasted cars, that as much as a half mile away, cars were seen going into spontaneous combustion. One of the weird stories that came out the past few days, there was some BBC show apparently where somebody was, an emergency first responder was driving someplace with his family and came upon a car that went into spontaneous combustion, went to help people, and he died in the event.
Really? Yeah.
And
so more of these stories are coming out.
Right, I'd heard that one before, but I don't know much more about it. But the ones that I am familiar with are ones in Lower Manhattan, like Ellen Cook, the first responder who was over by the seaport, over by the FDR Drive, saw a car go into spontaneous combustion. He was trying to rationalize it because this is weird. You got to explain it in your own mind. What happened? Mm-hmm. And you're assessing it. And so he came up with a story that he thought, well, maybe a fireball rolled down the street from the World Trade Center and got to this car. It's the best he could do. But to see a car a half mile away going into spontaneous combustion is peculiar.
Oh, yeah. And this is such a massive, traumatizing, obviously, event as well, Judy, that these are I'm saying the way the human mind works is that you might be able afterwards in a situation you try to make sense of it all, but certain things are maybe even you kind of push them into the corner of your mind, if you know what I mean. So we don't even know, many of these stories might not even have been reported on. There might be tons more, but people simply haven't been able to make sense of it, and therefore chosen not to talk about it. Correct?
Right, because who'd believe them? I mean, they don't want to be locked up in the loony bin.
That's right. Yeah.
Here's another example: the steel-toed boots. People are given an answer and they run with it. They don't stop to think if it makes sense. And a lot of those stories got started that way, like steel-toed boots melting after a couple of hours on the pile because it's so hot.
Yeah.
As I often say, if the steel oven is melting, the turkey inside is more than well done.
That's right.
but there's no reports of burned feet and burned bones, and legs getting burned off.
Yeah.
Or equipment not functioning. But with the number of stories like that, they are observing something. It clearly isn't what they thought it was, or what they rationalized it as, but something was happening, like the spontaneous combustion of the cars, and of the cars they carted away. The ones where there was enough to cart away, there was 1,400 is the number given.
What happened with these cars? Where did they go? Are they destroyed, all of them today, do you think?
There's a few of them that have been saved. Some of the ambulances and I think a fire truck or something here or there. They picked particular ones. But there's something I had noticed about West Broadway. I called that the swamp because it looked like it with all the fire hoses and wet paper and gunk. It looked like a swamp down the street. But every vehicle for about 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center complex, from Building 7 on north, was toasted. What I mean by toasted, not necessarily burned, but it's toast. It's history. You can't repair it. You gotta get another one. Something happened to it. And all of it kind of looks like it's burned, but you don't know what happened to it. All the way, every single one of them up in some part of them, maybe all of them, maybe part of them, was toasted. No buildings on the side were toasted. No signposts were toasted. No trees, bushy trees overhanging the streets were toasted. Paper was unburned. You don't see any bonfires of paper anywhere. So you start looking at what the connections are. Signposts are potted in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They're grounded. Cars are up on rubber tires. They're not grounded. Okay, now
Mm-hmm.
look at the towers. The towers, the real tall part of the towers, it's a long way from grounding. Let's say they can, if you're going to build up a charge in something that can't get out fast enough, that might happen in the upper part, but not right at the ground.
Mm.
So I'm wondering if that has something to do with why they only go down to the ground, but not below the ground. And especially the outer columns that are left at the bottom. They're about, the lobby size outer wheat checks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are very well grounded. So I wonder if that's why they remained, and the rest of the stuff that wasn't tacked down to them did not.
Well, that's an interesting take on that. And so this thing with the cars there possibly explain it in that way, that the energy had nowhere to go since they were on the rubber tires. So basically, that means that if they would have been touching the earth, the ground, the energy would have been discharged, if you will, this way. But since they weren't, this potentially explain, like one witness said, Michael D'Angelo, I remember his story. He said that the car started to, pop off, basically, or going off, cooking off, I think was what the term he used. And so this would be focused around the engine part as well, where there is more metal. Is that correct?
Perhaps. This is just looking at the patterns, the trends of things.
Mm.
It might indeed be there's something about the engines, and maybe the engines are also wired in more with the rest of the car.
Yeah.
Because when you ground something out, you ground it to the engine.
Ah. Mm.
There's a lot of interesting things there. That wax spot car, it looks like it has a new wax job in the back end and pristine back end, but toasted front end.
Mm.
The door is where there's an abrupt change. Don't they have rubber gaskets around the doors?
I believe they do.
And there's things like that I start wondering about. Like there's another one where the back end is toasted, but not the rest. It stops right around the door seal.
Mm. So obviously different effects on different types of material. Metal or iron would react in one way to at the end of the day a frequency, a particular energy, while concrete would have a different effect, or it would break up differently, basically.
Right. Like what I noticed with the cars, the door latches and like the trunk latches were the first to go. And you have partly toasted car, but the trunk lids popped and the doors popped.
Mm.
You could say, okay, the person was bailing out, but the trunk lid being popped. There's an awful lot of them with pop trunk lids.
Interesting. I want to ask you one more thing here, and then we can wrap things up with the first segment here, Judy. Do you believe that this was a new weapons test? And a continuation from that question is, have you seen any other evidence of a similar type of directed energy weapon elsewhere in the world?
That ties right into what I was saying about popped trunk lids. It's a pretty weird thing to see,